Hello everybody, hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today we're going to be looking at a potential tropical disturbance which is going to be moving throughout parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and we're going to be going over all of that in today's video, including your precipitation type and then also your rainfall amounts, and we're going to look at multiple different models to see what they're showing. This is one of our first tropical entities of the entire season. It's the first in the Atlantic basin, at least it's the first potential tropical disturbance in the Atlantic. We had one before in the Pacific basin, but this is the first one in the Atlantic Ocean this year. So let's start off here with your National Weather Service page, and we do have a very active National Weather Service page. Now, we have winter weather advisories throughout North Dakota as well as northern Maine. We also have freeze warnings and freeze watches in effect throughout much of the Great Lakes, the Mississippi Valley, as well as the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, through up the spine of the Appalachians, and then we also have that through a little bit of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. And don't be surprised if this gets extended northward here into parts of New England and also throughout parts of upstate New York. I'm not sure if the growing season has actually started throughout those regions, but definitely, if the growing season hasn't started, they won't actually put up a freeze warning or a freeze watch because they only put those up when the growing season starts, just to warn you if you have any vegetation outside. So the growing season might not have started there yet, but definitely, even if it hasn't, it's going to be very, very chilly over this region as well. We're going to have temperatures into the 20s, even the teens, and the 30s for your low temperatures. We have a little area of some freeze watches, and then we have some wind advisories throughout the south central and southeastern United States. And we also have some excessive heat warnings and heat watches throughout Southern California. And we even have a little flood watch area through southern Texas because of this tropical disturbance, which is going to be moving through over the next couple of days, and it's going to be pretty much wrapped up and done with as we get through Tuesday of next week. So let's get right into what our models are showing. Now, this is your European model forecast. You're going to have this low pressure that's kind of forming right now. You have some general thunderstorms and unsettled weather over parts of central and northern Mexico, and this is going to be moving its way eastward. And as it gets into the Atlantic Ocean, it's or the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to be very, very warm in those areas. It has been very warm for much of the winter. You do have the very cold Arctic air mass to the north, so that is going to really suppress the system. So if we didn't have that, maybe you could get something a little bit more. Right now, the chances of the tropical disturbance actually getting to a tropical depression or tropical storm force is fairly low, between 5 and 10%, maybe 15% chance of becoming a tropical disturbance, but it is still definitely something that we have to pay attention to. So here is that unorganized mess of thunderstorms and showers. Most of it is offshore, but you do see for southern Texas there, where you had those flood watches, you do have some very heavy rainfall moving through, and that's going to be fairly persistent. Moves out, this would be by Sunday morning, and now it's all over the Gulf of Mexico and over southern Mexico there. And then as we continue, this is going to be by Sunday afternoon and evening, and you're seeing those heavy rains move through south and central Florida. And as we continue here, really just continues to pummel those areas, moves over the Bahamas. It's over by this point the Dominican Republic and Cuba, and it's moving eastward by this point. And then you just see some lingering showers not associated with the system. So if you're looking at, if you want to know your total rainfall, you have about anywhere in those yellows, 1 to about 2 inches of rainfall in the reds and oranges. That's where you're between 2 and 5 inches. The darker the red, the higher the precipitation amounts. And we do see offshore and over the Bahamas a little bit, you do see some amounts over 5 inches, and that's in those browns and those whites. That's between 5 and 7.5 inches. And then kind of in those purples, that's where you're really getting up there. You're getting between 7.5 and 10 inches. And the pinks, that's between 10 plus inches. So it's definitely going to be a lot of rainfall, especially according to this model. Over the Bahamas wants to put a lot of rainfall, but it's really going to be centered where most of your rainfall is going to be, is offshore or over southern Mexico, southern Florida, and through parts of Cuba and into parts of the Bahamas there, and that's where you could see between 2 and 4 inches of rain for southern Florida, and then for the Bahamas, maybe even up to 5 or more inches of rainfall. Now, here's your infrared satellite imagery, and this is your forecasted infrared satellite, and you're gonna see me use this quite a bit as we get further into the Atlantic hurricane season. And you can go check out my Atlantic hurricane season forecast video. It's on my channel because I did put one out, and it kind of goes over what I am expecting to happen over the Atlantic with this hurricane season. Now, this is showing you how cold those cloud tops are and how far it's gonna rise. Those clouds are gonna rise. The lower those temperatures, these are in Celsius. So those reds and almost those black colors, those are indicating between -60 and -70 degrees Celsius. So those are some very cold cloud tops, and that's usually what you see with these hurricanes. For example, with Hurricane Dorian, you had cloud tops -80 to -90. So we're not seeing anything like that. But once the colder those cloud tops, that's usually the more intense those thunderstorms or hurricanes, because you can also use these for thunderstorms to kind of see how high those cloud tops are going to rise. So as we continue here, this can be by Saturday, and this really gives you a good idea of how organized or unorganized these systems are going to be. You kind of see a little bit of a break in the infrared, in a bit lower, a bit higher temperatures throughout kind of that core in the middle there. That's probably where your low pressure system is centered. As it moves further east, it really just turns into a mess, and you really can't really pick it out, but it is this big, large mess of these thunderstorms. So I think there is a chance that the National Hurricane Center does acknowledge this and actually put out some sort of forecast for this, but I think that chance is very low. It doesn't look like it's going to be anything too significant except for the rainfall. I don't think it's going to have anything that's really crazy with your winds or anything like that, but I do think you will have some pretty heavy rainfall, and that's definitely something that you have to pay attention to. So here is your GFS model, and this is kind of a wider view. This is of the Gulf of Mexico right here, and this is your precipitation. So you see we have rainfall over southern Texas, so I'll push this back a little bit, and we have rainfall over southern Texas there, and you see that rainfall is going to actually move further to the east. The GFS wants to push this further to the south, and that is because, again, the GFS, look at this blue line. This is the 540 line, and in the wintertime, this usually will indicate where your 32-degree line is. Because it's May, your 32-degree line is probably right around the 520 thickness line, so it is a bit further north, but it does actually outline pretty much very well that Arctic boundary right there. So that is suppressing this further to the south, and that's what the GFS wants to do. It wants to suppress this further to the south. So now your swath of rainfall that's going to be extremely heavy is going to be just touching the southern tip of Florida and probably a little bit further to the south, and we'll look at your rainfall amounts for that in just 1 second. So here is, this is going to be by Sunday morning, and now by Sunday afternoon and evening time, it's moving throughout parts of southern Florida, and then it's moving just over the northern Bahamas, and then it's going to be moving eastward. So it's nothing that's going to be too crazy significant there. And also, this is going to be a weaker solution because you have that cold air on the northern side. Usually what you would want is actually kind of a little bit of warm air still over parts of these areas that will allow the system to kind of thrive. But because you have that Arctic boundary right on those doorsteps, you're going to have very low dew points or very low amounts of moisture in the atmosphere all the way down to Florida, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina. So really, it's going to be very, very hard to squeeze out that moisture. So I think somewhere in between the GFS and what the European is showing is going to be what actually happens. Here's what the GFS is showing. Anywhere in those blues, 1/2 inch to 2 inches. Anywhere in the pinks and purples, that's between 2 and 6 inches. And then in the reds, that's between 6 and about 10 inches of rainfall. Now, we do see over southern Florida, you do see a little bit of that 2-inch to maybe even 4-inch line move through. But if we actually look at what the European model was showing, it is a bit further to the north here, and the European really had that extent of about 2 inches, reaching a bit further to the north there. So it is a little bit more of a further south model solution, but we'll have to see. It's definitely something that we're gonna have to look at. Now, the European model, if you remember, it had that 2-inch line almost to about southern central Florida there, and this solution pretty much has it to the southern tip of Florida here. So here's your chance from, this is the European ensemble model, and this is basically a combination of about 40 to about 50 models. I don't know the exact amount here, but it's between 40 and 50 different models, and they all have different parameters, so they all have different kind of solutions. So what they do is they kind of find the mean of this, and then they put it here. So this is the percentage of those models that were showing tropical depression wind speeds of 20 knots or greater, which would be about 36 to 38 knots or 38 miles per hour. So you do see anywhere in those grays, that's between 5 and 10% chance, and then kind of into those purples, that's between 10 and about 20% chance. And you do see we do have a little bit of that, maybe getting up to 15% chance there, but that's definitely going to be as you get further east, and it's probably going to already have passed Florida by that point, as it is strengthening potentially into a tropical depression here. And then as we look at your chance of tropical storm force, wind speeds of 34 knots or greater, which is somewhere around 40 or so miles per hour, you're seeing we have between 5 and 10% chance in that gray, and then in those purples, again, 10 to 15% chance, and you see that's even further east than what we were saying before. So it is a very low chance that this does develop into a tropical storm force wind speeds. Hurricane is pretty much unheard of with this type of system, so we're definitely not going to be seeing any type of hurricane out of this, so it's nothing that's going to be too significant. Only thing that you really have to worry about here is potentially some high winds or some higher waves there on the coastal region, so make sure that you are staying safe if you are going to the beach, and definitely also be aware of those flooding potentials for parts of southern Florida. Anyways, guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.